But I just had so much anxiety to even interact with anyone, not just women. I never in a million years would have pictured that I would end up in this position and fuck over 1,000 chicks.
Oh, hey, man. It's a nice shirt you got there.
Oh yeah,
What
I
does it
do
say?
it for the hose.
You do it for the hose? I do it for the hose. What's up, guys?
There is
Today we
this.
have something a little bit different. I got a good buddy of mine, John. He used to go by Jmulv. Now he goes by John Anthony, who's been in the community for ages and is what I would consider one of the OGs. So you want to give a little background about yourself, man?
Yeah, so I started off with Mystery Method back around 2009. Um, that was when I started formal game, although I've been going out to bars and clubs since I was in college. I just turned 36, although I was telling Alex, a bunch of people have been guessing lately that I'm in my mid 20s, like 26, 27 might be it because I'm juicing vegetables and eating very healthy. I'm reading all these books on anti-aging and stuff like that and actively trying to reverse my biological age. Uh, yeah, I ordered this shirt. I do it for the hose, and I was telling Alex about it. He was like, "Send me the link," and I was like, "No, look it up yourself." And now he has a different version. So
Slightly different version. I also got the T-shirt, but the T-shirt isn't as good. I like the tank top more.
we are in the Christmas spirit. So what else? My background: I worked for RSD in 2012, teaching programs on the East Coast, from New York originally. Traveled all around the world in a whole bunch of different countries, about 30 different countries, and now have returned back to New York, like the prodigal son returning home.
Let me
Uh,
ask this. So I already know the answer to this because I know you really well. But what, like, for anyone who's not really that familiar with you, what makes you an authority? Like, what makes you someone who people should be like, yeah, this guy knows his shit?
well, my big claim to fame, I fucked my 1,000th girl from Cold Approach in December 2018 last year. Um, I was just showing Alex like an updated lay count graph. It kind of does like an exponential trend.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously, there's asymptotes. It can't go on forever. There are human limits to how many girls you can bang. Um, but yeah, I mean, I basically have been widely regarded as one of the top guys, if not the top guy, besides yourself, uh, for a long time, just because I've optimized and evolved my method. Um, I've kind of taken a very scientific approach. So the original formation of the method came in about 2012. That's when I first hit my first 100 girls in June 2012. I got added to a forum called Top Beasts. There was like 30 of us that were put in there. It was a lot of the best guys in the world at that time that were assessed for a variety of factors by these really fucking nerdy guys in the community that were basing our field reports, our posts, different stuff people were seeing like out in the field, etc. People vouching for one another. But we all got added into this forum, and I befriended a lot of the guys and kind of picked their brains, vacuumed up a lot of their knowledge, and then kind of found the key patterns and overlaps in what we were all doing. And I prioritized a lot of the information, and I said that here's like most of what we were doing was fairly common, and there was a lot of overlap. So what I did was that was the basis of my system. And then from that point forward, I just sought out guys that were better than me at any area of game. Who's better than me at day game and why? Who's better than me at text game, at online game? Who's better than me at running dates? Who's better than me at rotations? And then I would befriend that person, value exchange, whatever the fuck, hang out with them, and find out why. And a lot of times, what's ironic, even after getting up to like 300, 400, 500, 600 girls, I would still like pick the brain. Like when we met, what was it, like a few years ago? I saw you were crushing it online, and so I ended up asking you more questions than like a newbie would, or even just like a regular guy in the forum, just because I saw the value in it, right?
Yeah, that kind of leads into how you and I met. For anyone who's not familiar with this story, this was when about playing with fire was probably 6 months in, and I had heard of you very loosely at the time, but I was not familiar with you at all. And I think the big misconception, I'm sure I've told you this in the past, is that people think that you're just a giant dick. They don't realize that you're a completely different person. Not you're a completely different person, but like you're a cool, solid guy. Versus online, sometimes you can come off as a little bit of a dick. Like especially like I think back in those days. So that was like my perception of you. And then you PM me, and you were like say, yo, how do you do this? How do you do that? But I think a good amount of people PM me all the time. This is a quick side note. I think that for anyone who's trying to learn something, a big part of it was that you offered me value. You offered me so much value that I would have to be stupid to not like kind of spend some time and explain to you my online method, because you're like, yo, dude, this is how I do, night game. You want to take a look at my product, and there was just like so much. I was like, all right, this makes sense. That's like, I think also like a side note for anyone who's like PMing either me and you. If you offer like enough value, we'd have to be stupid not to, like converse with a person like.
I don't even let guys PM me anymore. It just got too overwhelming. Like I don't use my regular Facebook account. I have like a separate Facebook account that I use for my mastermind. And so like whenever I go on the old Facebook account, there's like a million messages. And guys try to like DM me on Instagram and shit. People or email me. People will just be like, "Hey man, like answer this whole question about game or answer this whole situation," and then they don't get a reply.
Dude, at least you don't do it online where you get like like a like 10 screenshots of a Tinder interaction from start to finish, like from a person you've never met, and then like a giant 5-paragraph backstory when the girl's giving them one-word answers.
Wait, going back to that point real quick, it's like I wanted to find people that were better than me in any area, so that this is why I call it like scientific approach. Like I was a philosophy major as one of my majors, along with computer science, but a position is only as good as the arguments behind it, and everything's always subject to change. And that's how you come up with solid, rational arguments. If someone can disprove my argument or make a more solid case for something, I'm not going to be stubborn and hold on to my own position. Like a good example is like Mystery, like in the community. He's one of the guys I respect the most, maybe the most, just for a lot of the pioneering concepts and a lot of the solid stuff. But a bunch of his method was also wrong or vastly suboptimal. But he like formed it and then just like put it in stone. And that's like much to his detriment, because in the modern day, a lot of that stuff is outdated or vastly suboptimal or just has been proven as straight up wrong. But he still teaches like those original principles from 2005, 2006. So I always say in my videos, like he's stuck in 2006 and he had great potential, but he kind of just like leveled off, and that was like the best he could ever do because he just froze his system in time. Whereas guys like you and me, we're constantly evolving. That's what keeps this fun. Like we're constantly split testing. That's like the marketing term for like taking a control and then you test it with a variable new way of doing things. So I would have my method, like the core of the method, and I would find people that were better than me at any area. But at the same time, I was also scanning the method for weak spots. So I was always trying to find like where are the areas where it's breaking down. And as I understood the system on a macro level and even the micro pieces, I was constantly looking at ways to innovate as well. Here's an area that's really important that drives a lot of the results. What can I do to innovate this? That's like the date straight to the house, or like various other techniques, like different framing techniques or different text, reopeners or whatever, that I would test against what I was currently doing that would make a big impact. And that's why the progress is like exponential. Like it used to be, I could do 100 a year, and then I think my best amount of girls in a year period was from mid 2017 to mid 2018. It was like 245 new chicks, and that's only counting new closes. It doesn't even count new hookups like blowjobs and handjobs that didn't result in a close. So what's kept us fun is to constantly be evolving and optimizing the system. At this point, it's extremely rock solid, but everything is still open to change. There's not gonna be like big dramatic changes, but there's still ways to improve things. Like still like lots of leads slip through the cracks ultimately, right?
I mean, I think you honestly have to. Like, if you don't evolve, if you just form your opinion and you stick to it for definitely, you become irrelevant. Kind of like Mystery did. Like, yeah, like you said, like at a certain point in time, he was like an authority figure, but no one would really consider him an authority figure now. Everyone just thinks of him as like irrelevant, like someone.
Well, there's still like hardcore. There's still hardcore guys that think like his method is the only way, and that's just foolishness.
Right. Yeah, man. One thing though, I think you're like, I don't know how to say this. Like, I think you're probably a pretty fascinating person. No homo. Like, just how driven you are to improve and get laid. Like both those things. How driven you are to improve your game and how driven you are to fuck girls. Like that kind of motivation and drive is like very seldom seen. if ever?
Yeah, like going back into my like nerdy roots, I'm like a big like systems hyper analytical optimizer at the core, like regardless of whether it be girls or whatever. Like I did the same thing in poker. Like when I found out about poker, I realized there was like very specific rules and different things you could do that would impact probabilities, and the end result could be money. And I did the same thing with day trading stocks even back in high school. So whether it be stock trading or poker playing or any skill game really, I've always been able to master it very quickly and then take it to like extreme levels. So like I remember my first poker tournament I entered. It was like a large multi-table tournament. I'm talking about my first big poker tournament where I had to like pay a whole bunch of money up front to enter. And my mom was like, "Oh, you're wasting your money. What are you doing?" And I had read a whole bunch of the top strategy books on it, and I was able to synthesize all that information and pick out all the key components of the strategy. And I don't have like a pure photographic memory, but during the tournament I could like recall sections of the book and almost like not reread it, but have it like accessible in my mind. Um, and I placed third, and I would have I had a good shot at first. Like I was a chip leader coming down into the top three, but all the odds shift and all the rules shift when you're what they call shorthanded, when you're down to a small amount of people, because you're normally playing with table sizes of 8 to 10 people. So when you get down to a small amount of people, people are doing lots of bluffing and aggression. I hadn't adapted to that yet, and I adapted to that in the next tournament and got first. And it's the same thing when I wrote my first field report out using mystery method. I was using all the advanced techniques in his book, like merging sets and doing pawning and all this stuff. Even though it was like my first night out formally using it, I was like integrating all the concepts in parallel from his book. Um, that carried over, and it kind of arguably the most important uh, pursuit, which was my first job out of college, which was nuclear missile defense for the U.S. government. So my first job out of college was with Lockheed Martin. My job was if there's a nuclear, biological, or chemical missile attack, how do we optimize the speed of response time and the accuracy of response against a large scale attack? So we do scenarios in North Korea and Iran attacking LA and New York City, for instance. And that was like, we go over like the worst case scenario and being able to stop it and how to drive optimization into the system such that um, we'd effectively be able to stop it. And I kind of took all those powers, so to speak, mostly just genetic, because I've read lots of cognitive science books, and intelligence and analytical abilities are mostly genetic, contrary to popular belief. So I don't have any, I'm not like bragging about them that I came to them on my own. I was just given like a genetic gift, not from God, of course. But I applied that to how to bang girls with the highest probability, how to get the most girls possible. And I think the drive there, the drive component, I had this analytical ability. Guys like you could have applied this to any number of pursuits.
Why do you think that you're not you're a professional player, so a professional poker player or a professional scientist? Like, what made
No,
you specifically?
I was gonna get that. I was just hearing like a bunch of background noise. So I was listening. With girls, I think that came from just like a extremely verbally abusive upbringing, and then as an adult, having like probably a deep rooted like insecurity or like need for external validation. Like some of the best like martial artists I've met, they were like bullied as a child,
Yeah, yeah.
or like fitness instructors used to be like the fat kid or whatever. I was like degraded nonstop and like verbally abused nonstop to the point where as an adult there's like this big need for validation, which isn't necessarily healthy, but that combined with the analytical abilities is what drove me to take this to extreme levels. And now there's been over 1,100 girls. Like it's quite a large number for just a common man. Like I'm not a celebrity. Like no, I mean like because if you look at like someone like Russell Crowe claims like 1,000 girls, but he has the whole celebrity edge, the whole celebrity advantage. So for a common non-celebrity, non-athlete, I'm not like model looks. I get chicks telling me I'm hot all the time, and I don't know if that largely comes from the confidence and vibe and charisma, because like all the dudes on the forums will hate and on the YouTube videos and be like, "You're a 2 out of 10, you're a 3 out of 10." So all
What
these
would you, as a quick side question, what would you honestly rate yourself?
like an 8.5.
Okay.
I mean, I'm 6'4". That helps. I don't know about facial symmetry and shit, but I think like the scruff works. I have blue eyes. When I'm looking healthy and shit, I think I can be like an 8.5. When I'm fucking and I quit drinking, but when I was drinking and haggard and hungover, I was in like the 6 to 7 range at times. I think
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I was like I was pale and the life force was stricken. But lots of guys like on these internet forums and in videos and shit, like dudes are constantly being like, he's ugly as fuck, like he's a 2 or 3 out of 10. But and guys that know me well, I've regularly banged like super hot chicks. I've been with lots of 9+, and like I said, I don't know if it comes from the confidence and charisma, the way I carry myself, and the height of being 6'4". I don't think that's the largest part of the equation, but chicks are constantly saying I'm like super hot and that they think I'm incredibly good looking and stuff like that. So I don't think I'm like model looks or like some like super hottie, but I think I'm above average looks. And even if I wasn't objectively, like I'm still always going to carry that mindset that I'm the fucking man and all that shit, because that's the proper mindset you need to carry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you and I are both average looking, but neither one of us is model looking. In fact, I think that's quite common for. Um, there's really very few model looking guys in the community. Like if they're model looking, they're typically already getting laid and they're not in the community. There's a few exceptions to that you're not.
What would you rate yourself?
In Miami, just depends on where I am. And if I'm in like fucking China, I would rate myself a 9. But in Miami, I would rate myself a 7.5 on purely on looks. If I'm being purely objective.
What about like US overall, not just Miami? Miami
Jumps up to an 8.
okay.
Yeah. I think that once I really max out on muscle growth, like in a year or two, I'll probably be at like 8.5, maybe 9, maybe if I really max out. But yeah. What else was I gonna ask? Oh yeah, one thing I did want to touch on is why do you feel that? Oh yeah, what percentage do you think that your results were motivated by the validation, and what percentage of it was just for the love of the game? What percentage of it was just like I want to fuck girls? I purely on a primal, I don't know, level enjoy fucking a lot of hot girls.
Yeah.
What do you think is like the split there?
Well, I should say that I'm like a nihilistic. Well, first of all, like in college, I arrived at nihilism. Right. For those of you who don't know, I rejected God, an ultimate purpose in the universe, um, an objective basis for morality. uh, I don't subscribe to any like social or political ideologies. I see things like sports or like politics as like a complete charade that I would never partake in, because like I've never voted, for instance. But um, but I see myself like as a nihilist, right? And at first that was like depressing, and I was like, this sucks. What's the point of anything? That's kind of like where my brother's at. It's really sad, where you just look at everything as absurd and you just become like full apathetic mode. But I read a bunch of Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, and he talks about how you can like use this as an empowerment model, and you can create your own values and all this stuff. And this is where he gets into the whole concept of the Ubermensch and the Superman. I have a shirt that says Ubermensch on it with Friedrich Nietzsche's face on Superman. But basically, after that took over, then I just resorted to like mass hedonism, like coupled with like sociopathic Machiavellianism. So, so what that means in layman's terms, Machiavelli he wrote the book The Prince, and he talks about how the end justifies the means. And a lot of stuff built into my game, why I get a reputation as being like the dark side of game or whatever, and people say I have like an anything goes style, but it's not really anything goes. It's just working within the rules.
Yeah, I wouldn't rate you as I wouldn't put you up purely as like the dark side of game because you're not it's there's no malicious intent like with what you're trying to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. There's no malicious intent. Like I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not taking any like substantial risks, or at least in my calculations, I'm not.
But even aside from like even assuming we're staying fully within legal bounds, which
No,
I
I'm not
sure.
even talking about legal risk. I'm talking about like banging dudes' girlfriends and wives and shit, which I try to minimize at this point. My rule, like in the modern day, is that only if the dude lives like outside the city or the country.
But I guess the point I was trying to make is that like I've seen you interact with women like a lot, and you're not like I guess I think the assumption some people would have is that yeah John Anthony or Jmulv, so weird calling John Anthony, is a dick to these women. He's fucking them over. But in reality, like I think me and you are both probably on average better to women than most guys, than the average guy. Like
Yeah.
I've never seen you do anything that's hurtful, like emotionally to women or friends. I think part of that is self-awareness. Part of that is just like not being needy, not needing the woman to really like you, or not needing the relationship to work. Yeah, that's my little side tangent.
Well, the thing is that since I have like such big leg count numbers, I often get mislabeled or misrepresented as like the leg count guy, or like a guy that's just going after pure numbers. Like from knowing me pretty well, and I always talk about this. I usually run 6 to 12 girl rotation, 6 to 12 girl regulars on a harem. I've been teaching pickup since 2012 and my own company since 2013. So I left like the tech industry and that nuclear missile job and all this stuff. I have 2 master's and 2 bachelor's degrees I'm not even using. But guys just assume that I'm just like all after the numbers. But in reality, I'm running a harem. I'll prioritize the harem a lot of times over seeing new regular girls. I'll go on multiple dates with a girl, even if she doesn't bang on the first date. I'm not in like a huge rush to bang them. I'll like pass up banging the chick if she's like not attractive enough, or whatever, if she's like stumbling at like a nightclub. There's all kinds of like things that I pass up on, and there's all kinds of like I'm just not like it's actually like the direct opposite. Like the large numbers is a direct result of having a high level of skill, but I'll actually have like a meaningful connection with most of the girls. I'll get to know them. I do enjoy hanging out with them, even if we don't bang on the first dates. Like I'll even go on like 3, 4, 5 dates, even if we haven't banged. Whereas like someone like he told me like he told me he has no emotional connections with any of the girls. He won't go on more than a first date, and he's just hunting for like DTF sluts that are usually like on the below average side because they're easier. And then what else? He won't even like eat a girl's pussy because he's a germaphobe. So it's like, and he's preaching like radical honesty and like connect with the woman, but it's all bullshit. Like he doesn't in reality, like he's not connecting with any of them. He doesn't have a rotation, and he's basically just running numbers where it's mostly one night stands, like meaningless one night stands. Whereas someone like myself, I'm building a connection with these girls. Like obviously the rotation is constantly in flux. Like girls are. I was explaining that to my parents over the phone. Over the phone, they're like, "Are you with one girl? Or are you seeing multiple girls?" They're like, "Are there any regulars?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's a whole bunch of regulars."
All right, Mom. So there's 2 8s, but then there's this 9 who's a little bit more of a little bit more reliable, and they got this 9.5 that's not in the rotation yet, but I banged her a few times, and she's down with the raw dogging, so I think that she's almost there.
Yeah, they brought that up too. They're like, "I hope you're using protection," and they know that I banged over 1,000 girls. They both waited until marriage, but they like seen on my website and shit. And I'm like, "Well, I have a vasectomy. I've gone. It's over 5 years now. I got a vasectomy October 2014. I need a shirt that says "Cream Pie King." But no, I told them about the low risks for STDs and et cetera, et cetera. But no, to answer your question with the percentages, so yeah, nihilistic hedonism. But I do get like a big thrill, like playing chess, for instance, is kind of like relatively boring, whereas like doing pickup, like doing the seduction game, I look at it in my head like a chess match, but like I'm primarily attracted to hot chicks, and like there's so many dynamic variables that it's almost like high octane chess on steroids, where the result is like dopamine release from busting a nut. And I think you said, or maybe you haven't, but I can't remember, but I've definitely felt so before. Like almost like the game is like an end in itself, where like you get such a thrill from playing the game, so to speak, that it's not even about like an end goal or like an end. People are always like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like I'm just happy like constantly meeting new chicks and constantly fucking new chicks and having new girls in rotation. Like you have.
My theory is that I think it forces you to almost like, I don't, it sounds kind of corny, but like be a better person in the sense that you can't be a giant victim and bang a lot of girls. You can't be like super negative and bang a lot of girls. You can't dress like shit. You can't smell like shit. You can't be out of shape. Like there's so many things that you have to like if you want to really max out results. There's a lot of aspects of your life, like internal and external, that you have to also max out. So I think it forces you in the same way that if you really want to get serious about weightlifting, you have to get your diet right and sleep right. So it forces you to get all these other things in order, which then maximize your happiness. Whereas if you didn't have that strong incentive, like banging that hot girl, then you might not get those other things in order in the first place. Like, fuck it, who needs to shower? Fuck it, I don't really need to like lose my weight.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And I have some married friends and relatives. I won't say anybody's names, but like they've said, like someone close to me said, he's like, yeah, when I was dating my wife before she was married, she knew that if she would like get fat or be like a huge bitch that I would leave her, right? But now that we're married and she could take half my shit, there's like no more consequence and there's no more leverage. So now she'll just eat donuts all day long and drink soda all day long and be a huge bitch all the time. And having a kid complicates it further because then you're really locked in unless you want to like fuck over your whole kid's life. And there's no leverage or consequence. And you see lots of married people like get fat. Like I know a bunch of dudes that were like really in shape. They get married, they become like a huge fat whale. They're like having trouble. They're like breathing heavy and shit. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? They're like, oh, it doesn't matter anymore because like my wife, I'm with my wife. Like they've got their wife there, and the wife's getting fat too, and so they're both basically like devaluing themselves, but they don't care because they're just like coexisting in this like pathetic.
It's a negative cycle. The wife starts putting on a little weight. The husband starts putting on a little weight. It's like, well, if she's gonna be fat, then why the fuck am I
Yeah,
watching like
there's
that?
no consequences either. It's like you're like locked in with that stupid social contract, and especially for the man, like he's gonna like get totally fucked over if he gets divorced. So in America at least. So yeah, but I mean, yeah, like you said, like this incentivizes you. Like look at a lot of these dudes that like play video games all day and shit. They just like totally neglect hygiene. They don't give a fuck. Like if some chick is like, "You're fucking disgusting," because like the video games aren't gonna like stop putting out.
Imagine your PS3 is like, you smell like shit. Please shower before you press the start button. Like you're
But yeah,
getting
I
more
mean, no, I like that.
responsibility.
I like that spin on it. If people are like, "What are you doing, to better yourself?" You're like, "I'm banging lots of hot chicks."
It's people say that like, oh well, wait till you like get married. That's where like the challenge is, and in like a very certain sense they are right, in the sense that yeah, like having a solid relationship is some work, but I guarantee you it's so much harder to go out and be a massive player. Like that's where the real work is in. It's not easy to be, unless you're like you said, unless you're like famous, which is a giant shortcut, or professional
Yeah,
basketball, something like that. It's not easy. Like it,
yeah. No, you're right. Like I told you I used to be really skinny. Like it's not like I'm all fucking built now. Like look, if I like fucking flex, I'm not built, but I'm like athletic and decent shape. I'm like 202 pounds right now at 6'4". And like I used to be like 155, 160 pounds at 6'4". I have a fast metabolism, but I used to have like pencil arms and shit. And I remember when I first learned mystery method, I pulled like my first nine, and we were making out of the club, and I did all this shit. I made some errors, but I still got her back to my house. And like we were like we were making out and shit. We were hooking up, and like we were getting undressed. And when I was like fully naked, she's like, "You have the body of like a little boy or something, or like of a woman." She said something, either a little boy or a woman, and I remember I was like devastated, and she wouldn't fuck me, and I was just like, "Holy fuck!" And right, or like dudes that have like
Yeah, those memories just stick with you. I had something very similar happen. When I was going through the worst of my Lyme, I was down to 135 pounds, and I had this girl over who I had known for a bit. I never fucked
yeah,
her.
you have Lyme disease. Yeah, it sounded like you said Lyme
No,
disease.
yeah, yeah. And then I was now I'm 162 pounds, 163 pounds, but I was 135 pounds. So I was skinny as fuck. And I remember this one girl came over, and she was just like, "Oh, you used to be bigger. Do you work out? What do? You little weak boy." Like I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like this is just such a strong burning motivation to like
Yeah,
never have that happen again.
yeah. And yeah, what's cool about this is like I used to be like giving some tiny background on myself. I used to be like, I was probably the shyest person out of like 700 people in my graduating class from high school. I had like extreme social anxiety, and this isn't just fucking, we're not selling anything here. Because guys are always like, is this just a marketing story? You seem pretty outgoing now. But like, I had such debilitating panic attacks that I had trouble leaving the house. I was like constantly hyperventilating and shit. It was hard for me to like go on public transportation, like in a bus, like a school bus, or like fucking in a taxi or something like that, or even on a train or a plane. Um, I had extreme social anxiety and general anxiety, and I was diagnosed with that stuff. Um, but I just had so much anxiety to even interact with anyone, not just women. I never in a million years would have pictured that I would end up in this position and fuck over 1,000 chicks. And and the number is so ridiculous. Like a girl was guessing the other day, and I was like, it's really, 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 really high. And like whenever someone thinks really high, like a normal person, they'll say like 20 or 30 or something like that. And then when you tell them no, a lot higher, they're like 25. and you're like,
26.
and you're like, no, not per month.
26 and a half, you banging
in a lifetime. Um, but no, I mean, yeah, it does sound, for those of you that think it's a lie. Like I've literally like texted, like since I've known you, I think I've texted you a lot of the updates. I don't think I have recently because once I had 1,000, I just like stopped texting.
Does anyone
Updates.
at this point still think it's a lie? I mean, like, I feel
Oh,
like,
tons of people do because
really?
you have to. It's not. It doesn't seem that high to someone like yourself because what are you at?
Well,
Like you're like
no, to me, it still seems fairly high. I mean, like, and reasonable, definitely a
it's
couple
it's all
percent.
it's all relative though. Like giving a quick or example or whatever, like story. Like when I was at 3 lay count in my third year of college, I had been with 3 girls, and there was a girl that I really liked, and I found out she'd been with 9 dudes, and it bothered me for months. And I was like, how do you sleep with 9 people? And I just thought she was like a massive slut and all this stuff. And then when I was in graduate school, I met a dude that had been with like 29 chicks, and I was like, wow, you're the fucking master, like this and that, like teach me your ways. And I thought like 50 or 60 was like astronomical. And then even I remember when I was at like 120 or 130, I met Alex Dickinson. He was at like 148 or 150 or some shit, and even that seemed really high. And then I had heard someone claim, and it was like a lie claim that they were at like 500. I was like, there's no fucking way. But like at each point, it just seemed ridiculous. But like back on the forums, when I first hit 150, guys were like in such disbelief, and this was in like January 2013. So like this was, more guys have hit 100. A lot more guys have hit 100 by now. But like at that time, like everyone was like, "Whoa, there's no fucking way! 150 different girls." Like even 100 seems like incredibly high to most people. Like it's you just have to like look back at it, like from when you used to like think about how it used to see how much 100 seemed back in like the early days. Like I remember when I first thought about hitting triple digits, I thought it was like an impossible life goal. Like I was with my roommate. I think I was at like 20 something or whatever, and I was like, dude, can you imagine if we fucked 100 chicks in our lifetime? He's like, not possible. I was like, I know it's not possible. Can you imagine like walking around and being like, I hit triple digits? I'm like, we should make that like a life goal. He's like, it's so unrealistic. I'm like, I know, but wouldn't that be fucking awesome? And we also would say like, oh, how sweet would it be if we were getting like head from some girl like if that we were attracted to like every day? We always had this joke, this running joke, like all we want is daily head, and we couldn't seem to get that either. Like if we hooked up with a chick, a lot of times we'd lose her. We didn't know any of the mechanics of like keeping a girl around and that kind of stuff, and we didn't know how to get hot girls yet. And fast forward, now I hit fucking quadruple digits, but that doesn't even seem like that much anymore. Obviously, my mind is distorted now.
Well, I don't think it's a story. I think your reality starts to shift.
Yeah,
Like you're based
well, that's what I mean.
based on reality, based on experiences. So you have a series of bad experiences, and you start to think that's what reality is. Like if you're up until the age of 19, before I lost my virginity, or I guess I probably went to like mid 20s or early 20s. Like I thought that women were really difficult to sleep with. Women weren't like it was like kind of like a game where the guy had to like convince the girl, and like. And then my reality started to shift as I realized, oh shit, like girls kind of like to fuck as long
Yeah,
as you're like a cool, normal guy who can give them a good sexual experience. And then like the reality starts to shift, and now it's gone completely the other way. So I think it's like that pretty much with anything. It's just like your reality shifts.
yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you is, how do you feel? Do you feel like you basically rewired your brain as a result of game? Like because you said you had a lot of like anxiety just talking to anyone, but now that's clearly not the case. So do you think on like even like physical level, like your brain is just different than what it was when it was back in those days?
Yeah, I remember like well the big first step to like breaking out of my shell and like breaking out of my like really introverted space was like getting out of my parents' house. Like when I first like moved into a dorm in freshman year of college, I like started like coming to my own a little bit more, and I was like cracking jokes. Like I had to like force myself at first. I'd like crack jokes and different things like that, and I was like I was like forcing myself to like be part of conversations rather than just being like the passive observer. You know how like the really shy people a lot of times will just like exist in a group but not even really
Yeah.
contribute. I had to like force myself to contribute at first, and then like yeah, and then alcohol was like the real like next big shift where like, and that's and you know it turned into like a fucking addiction and a problem. But in the beginning, that was like my ticket to confidence and charisma. For the longest time, it was like here's this kind of like stifled like in my head analytical OCD guy that's like very good with numbers and systems and all this stuff. And when I drink the alcohol, I just that it just kind of kills that part. Not completely, it just like stuns it for a bit. And then I'm like talkative, but then I like turn into like an asshole, obviously, if I go I started drinking way too much. Um, but for the longest time that was like my crutch, so to speak, to get over the introversion. And you know, I had plenty of situations, even into like 2014, 2015. So I lost my virginity in 2001. So even a decade later, there were situations where like I remember like I had a hot pharmacist and I was like going to get my anxiety medication. This is in San Diego. It must have been like 2014. And I went up to the counter and like there was this really hot pharmacist and I like chickened out to like run game on her. And this happened like 3 months in a row where I was like going back each month to get my medication. And then one day I went in to get the medication after like a daytime pool party in San Diego, and I had like a bunch of drinks. I ran the set perfect, and then she ended up being a rotation chick, got her out on dates and all this stuff. And I was thinking in my mind like I never would be able to do that if I was sober, or I'd see a chick during day game. That's why I kind of hated day game for most of my pickup career because there was no alcohol involved. So I would like know exactly what to do and say, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Or if I did my approach in the nightclub without any drinks, lots of times would come across as awkward or uncalibrated to some degree. It just my game wasn't as strong, and then and I
It's a social lubricant, yeah.
yeah
But
I wouldn't be able to flow properly when I was vibing and stuff like that. But now, like as you know, I haven't drank in almost 2 months, and a lot of the anxiety that I was experiencing was coming from rebound anxiety, ironically, from the lack of alcohol in my body, because I was drinking in such heavy quantities and so often. Like a quick little neurochemistry lesson, like alcohol, just like benzos, like Xanax and those things, work on the inhibitory transmitter called GABA, which is like depressing your system. So it just kind of like chills out your whole body. But then if you do it in large quantities and frequently, your body doesn't produce as much of it normally. And then when the Xanax or the alcohol leaves your system, you have this rebound effect, and then everything's on high alert. You have this hyper excitatory state. The technical term is an androgenic storm. So I was experiencing this androgenic storm all the time, and I needed alcohol even to like get to neutral. And it was just like a bad cycle of like either needing alcohol or some kind of benzo to like put myself at neutral, and then I would drift into the buzzed state where I was social, but then I would very quickly surpass it and go into like over the top, out of control mode. So now like that's like behind me, but like um, I don't have that like lingering anxiety, which I think in large part was due to like alcohol withdrawals and alcohol like rebound anxiety effects. So now I can actually like run day game properly and not like I can like maintain eye contact. I don't have like this paranoia and this like high alert. Like when you're like hungover, like withdrawing from alcohol or some kind of benzo, you're like extra sensitive to light and sound. You have like an extra bit of paranoia. You're like more sensitive to anxieties and all these different things. It's the same effect as if you're like low on sleep or you have like a massive amount of stress or any number of other factors. And I just minimize my anxiety now by eating healthy, getting regular exercise, getting regular amounts of sleep, and not having this like chemical leaving my system all the time. I still haven't answered your percentage question about what percentage is due to abuse. What were the options? Abuse, hedonism.
oh, it was. I would say the options are validation because that can be a huge driving force. Just the sheer love of just fucking girls and the thrill of the game, just like the rush of just like not even fucking the girl as much as getting the girl.
Um, and the love of fucking the girl. That's like the feeling of winning plus the
No,
physiological.
just purely the physical. It's just like there's just purely like yeah, just fucking a hot girl, which let's face it, is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Um, I would say I would say probably over half is due to the validation. I mean,
S-
huh?
Still, you think, or like that was initially?
It's almost like alcohol, like as it was like initially to get over the social anxiety and to turn myself into an outgoing, confident, charismatic social person, and then it kind of lingered around so that it was just part of who I am all the time. I think kind of the same thing happened. Like I just have been in this mode for so long of like need to work new lead. Like if I'm not like bringing new leads into the funnel, so to speak, which means like I'm not using Tinder or Bumble or acquiring phone numbers from some source, from approaching at nightclubs or bars or whatever, um, and not going on regular new dates. I almost feel like I'm missing out on a whole bunch. I don't know. It just makes me like uncomfortable. like like I try to go into periods of productivity where I'm trying to shut that stuff out. I mean, it really is an addiction. It's like I told you, I closed even like at this stage, like I closed two new um, what was it? Two new Friday, two new Saturday, one new today, which is a Sunday. And there were rotation girls sprinkled in, so that sometimes there's like 3 to 5 girls on one day. So it's probably just full blown sex addiction at this point. Has has been for a long time. Can you say the same or no? Like a lot of advanced guys I know, it's like we're either fucking or we're texting to set up new opportunities to fuck, or we're using Tinder or at the club to get new like leads to work for dates to fuck. So it's like I'm either acquiring leads, working leads, or closing leads, or spending time with rotation girls, and that takes up such a large part of my life. And I wish it wasn't like that, but I feel like slave to it.
You don't feel like it's gone? Because I can say for myself, like, what, yeah, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I couldn't, it was really hard for me to just spend a whole day working or something like that, or spend a whole day like just hanging out, spending time with my family. Like the big running joke at family reunions was that I'm always Tindering, right? That was like, oh, what's Alex doing? Oh, let me guess, he's on Tinder, he's on his phone again. Like that was the
Yeah,
big joke. Versus, I feel like now, just I don't know exactly. There was not. I think honestly, getting Lyme was part of it. It kind of made me realize like what's important, and then like recovering from it. But like I just feel like now there's still that yeah that like drive, but it's I don't think it's as overwhelming for me anymore. Like I can be cool with just like settling down with one girl, like if I really like her, for example, if I want to do that, or I can be cool with just like spending a week or so just working, like not really focusing on leads. I guess there's still a small part of me that might be like, oh yeah, I'm missing out, but I don't think it's as strong. Do you still think it's as strong for you as it was years ago?
no, I used to like with night game, for instance. I used to like not be able to skip nights out. Like around the time, like in 2013 when I was living in Vegas, or in 2014 in San Diego when I was filming lots of infield. Like I literally couldn't, even if no one wanted to go out, and even if it was like an off night, I would either go out solo or I'd go to a strip club, like to game. But I always felt like I needed, and that's what helped me level up so much. But I always felt like my rationale was if I don't go out, especially if it was a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, if I don't go out, there's hot girls that I'm not meeting, or even going out late. Like sometimes friends were like fucking delaying to get ready, and it's getting to be like 10, 11. I'm like, guys, I could have gotten at least like 5 solid phone numbers between 10 and 11, or like now it's almost 12. Now I missed out on like 10 solid phone numbers and like a potential pull and coming back. I would give it in those terms. And like, I would oftentimes pass up like say I had like a 9 on rotation and she'd be like, "Oh, I want to like stand and fucking watch a movie." I would think like I know I'd rather go out and do game. Whereas these days I would almost every time stand with the rotation, like almost 100%. But back then, like if I stayed in with the rotation, even if it was a hot chick and I was enjoying it, I would have rather gone out and even struck out than stayed in and missed the opportunity because then it's like the FOMO thing, like the fear of missing out. Like the potential was there. I mean, and I still feel that to some degree, not so much with clubs anymore, but if I'm not like using Tinder for a day or for a week, I feel like there's all these potential hot girls, and it's almost like a gambling problem because you get that intermittent dopamine release. Like when someone's pulling a slot machine, that's not a skill game, so it's not a direct comparison. But like every now and then they're gonna hit a win, and that's gonna flood their brain with dopamine, and they don't know when it's coming. It's the same thing like when you're swiping Tinder. Like you don't know when you're gonna hit a match, and when you do, it's like boom, and you don't know like out of the messages you send like which girl's gonna be all receptive, and then like which dates you're gonna close. But like there's like that unknown factor. It's like a game of incomplete information, and then you get these like victories, and that rewards your brain with dopamine and stuff like that. But I'm kind of like hooked on that to some degree. I'll even like be out, like having a nice conversation with people, and I'll just feel compelled to like take my phone out and like check. Like I don't even want to like let too much time pass because you know how like working leads, like if a new match comes in, you want to like work it to the bone as quickly as possible.
Right.
Or like if a girl texts you and you don't check your phone for like 3 or 4 hours, and then you miss the opportunity to see her that day, or whatever the different set of possibilities are, like being kind of glued to your phone and like regularly engaging in the lead working or those things, is going to optimize and maximize your results. And part of me is like still in that mode. I'm not just going for pure numbers, but part of me like feels compelled to like not miss the opportunities just for the sake of feeling like I missed out on opportunities, which is fucking stupid.
I think a lot of guys might scoff at that. They might say like, "Oh, like like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you?" But I would make the argument that there's pros and cons to having that mindset because there's no successful businessman, no multi-billionaire, no pro athlete who doesn't have that same exact mindset when it comes to their craft. So, business, like really successful business people are the same exact way. Like they can't, it's not they need the extra $1 million, but it's like, there's a business opportunity. I can't let it pass. Like I have to do the acquisition. Or, like the pro athletes, like I have to dribble the basketball. Like otherwise, the guy on the other team is going to be better than me. And I think that like you can't, it's almost like you can't be perfect or as close to perfect at something without that sort of mindset. And the con to it is obviously that it can create restlessness and it makes you feel unfulfilled at times because you're always going for something. But I think that in order to achieve a certain level, you have to have that to an extent.
And it is more data, like from a nerdy standpoint. Like I'm synthesizing all this information into the system and reconciling it. And as the data accumulates, like I'm seeing new patterns, I'm like seeing new angles, etc. So like I think Jeffy always jokes, he's like, yeah, like I'm doing all this like for science. Like, but it's in part true. I mean, like you're gonna as you accumulate like more and more and more experience, you're seeing like you're forming heuristics, first of all, in your brain, which is just like categories of situations. But like you're refining each of the heuristics into like further and further sub heuristics. That's why at this point in the game, after over 1,000 chicks, like I have a mastermind where I give a weekly Facebook Live, and I have a bunch of clients and customers that hit me up, and I can answer like any situation, no matter what, with like a really really solid answer that's not only fully backed by rational points, but also by just empirical support and data, because something is close enough to it that I know like with high probability this is the answer, or I've experienced nearly everything that I get asked, as I'm sure is the case for you as well.
Yeah, like not 98% of the Tinder questions I get, like I've been through the same thing, even 99 probably, and I already have like an automatic like answer that I've used
Yeah,
several times with success. It's not like there's not as much creative problem solving needed at this point in a sense. Like
yeah,
I don't
that's the thing.
really
That's the
ponder
thing,
it.
and it's like unconscious for us. Like when we're doing these things, when we're running the game and stuff like that, it's just like the input comes in and it's like automatic what happens. But for a lot of guys that are learning this or trying to get better at it, they're it's like the complete opposite. Like they're trying to like reason out what is the best move, or they're implementing
Which
bullshit
makes sense
strategies.
because first is conscious competence before unconscious competence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think from an outside perspective, though, purely an outside perspective, it's good that like people like you exist because guys don't have to really reinvent the wheel because there's someone
Yeah.
who's dedicated so much energy to it and already it's just like in the same way that it's good that there's people who are really dedicated to marketing out there. Like me personally, like I find internet marketing interesting, but I don't want to spend like years of my life just testing, split testing every type of ads and like all that shit. Like I just don't want to do that. So I'm really happy that there's people who've already done that, who I can just read a book from and pick up like all the information that I need without having to like invent that whole like, thing. Same thing with like lifting weights. Like I don't want to try out a bunch of weightlifting routines. I just rather read a book from a guy who's like super jacked, who already can pinpoint what are the optimal training methods. I think that lifting weights is obviously a lot easier than marketing in that sense. But yeah, so I think that, again, like I think people might scoff at you, like sometimes at you, like, oh, 1,000 leg count, like, well, like, what do you have, like nothing else that interests you? But like, it's good that there's someone who did that, because then it means that other people don't have to like reinvent the wheel. They don't have to like have as many failures as you did initially, because they can learn from your failures. If they're smart, if they're dumb, they'll keep failing on their own. But they can learn from that and skip ahead in a sense.
Yeah, I had a client. This was like mid last year. That's why I got more serious with YouTube and more serious with my marketing efforts. He told me, he's like, dude, he's like, I was made fun of nonstop as a kid. I was like always such a huge loser. Like everyone doubted me that I'd be able to get chicks. And he pulled back-to-back nines on my boot camp, or what he refers to as tens. They were definitely legitimate nines. Like one was like a Broadway actress and all this shit. They were like tens for him. But he sat me down and he was like, you essentially, by teaching me this stuff, have allowed me to like bypass like not only all the time and the effort, but like I also bring all the analytical powers to the table. I call them powers. It's really just like a genetic, like a freak genetic thing. Like me, my brother can do it too. I mean, he's fucking wallowing in nihilism and despair still. But like, and if I could have, I met another dude that has a similar brain to me, and he's like, he's made millions and millions of dollars in poker, and he's like, you could have done the same if you stuck with poker. I could have done the same if I stuck with chicks.
I think there's such a big difference between could have and would have. Like you said, your brother has the, very similar mind to you, but, he hasn't banked nearly as many girls as you. And I think like could have and would have are such different things. I think a lot of people have potential, but very few people like live up to that potential. Not saying that your brother is not doing that, but I'm just saying like, it's like could have.
He's not even interested in that. Like he had a long-term girlfriend. It's like he's like a shame to my family name. My dad waited till marriage to have sex, so I'm like avenging their limited lay counts. But my point is that like he's like, yeah, not only did you bypass all that time for me and all that, all the like trials and tribulations and learning process and all that stuff, but I arguably did it a lot better than anyone could have too. Like the fact that I was able to do so well out of the gates with pickup, with chess, with poker, even with like fucking defending the country against nukes. I was literally able to like come out like really like kind of advanced like almost instantly, and then take it, because some people are like, oh, you must be a natural because like you banged a lot of girls even before you got before you started getting hardcore into formal game. But no, it's just because I was already starting to see patterns and social interactions. I can just learn a skill game very, very quickly. It's like that with any skill game I've ever encountered. So like I can learn languages really fast. Like right now I'm looking at like a total random aside, but I'm looking at like the flipping houses business, since like with the stock market and with crypto and these different things, a lot of it is manipulated at the higher levels by either elites or people with shitloads of money, and people are like cheating the system and using insider information, and they're making the markets do certain things. The people at the bottom get fucked. But something like real estate and flipping houses has real value, and it's another skill game. You can learn certain characteristics of markets, and I'm trying to turn that into a whole machine now. And same with longevity and anti-aging and health optimization. How can you reduce?
Why do you? Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how can you reduce your risk for major degenerative disease close to 0% for all the major diseases, and as practical and easy to assimilate into your life terms as possible? How can you minimize the rate at which you're aging and decrease your age and reverse a lot of the processes, et cetera? So I'm like applying this mindset, and that's like very powerful. But that dude said it, and I'll shut up in a second. That dude said like, you brought me to that point, and now I'm like operating at that point. I'm saying things that you're saying. I'm doing things that you're doing, and I also made it as easy to assimilate and practical as possible. So like, guys like hear my system and like they're implementing it like an hour or two later. So and at a advanced level, like I'm making guys advanced in like a day or two. And that's not really being done in most places in the industry. You're probably doing the same with the online game stuff.
Well, I think there's a level of empowerment that comes from like mastering anything, and I guess like sleeping with a lot of girls is definitely qualifies in that category. Meaning like it's kind of hard to be really victim mindset like in other aspects of your life if you have slept with a lot of girls. If you take the same mindset and apply it to other things, like I don't know, when I got lined the second time, like I had already accomplished a good amount of things. I mean, not to say that I'm an accomplished person, but I had like that level of, I guess, like faith in myself. So I wasn't like, I'm fucked. It was like, all right, what do I have to do to figure this out? Like, what do I need to do? Which people do I need to talk to? What information do I need to seek out? What kind of treatment do I need to do? And I think that can be said for anything. Like if you master, say, bodybuilding, you can take the same work ethic and the same like, I don't know, attitude and apply it to business. And same thing, like master a game, you can apply that to business. It's just like you kind of just refine the way your mind works. But one thing I did want to ask you is why do you think that a lot of the guys who are struggling the most with game are actually the super intelligent people?
I'm looking back. I'm trying to think back to a lot of my clients.
Because you say it's a strength, and I totally agree with you on that. But I think for some people, it's almost they feel like it's a curse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of my best clients have been guys that are like engineers, computer science people, or I think my very best client was like actually a poker player, because they resonate with the way that I teach the system, because the system is analytical at its core. Like it's very like systematic and methodical. But yeah, I think with some other smart guys, they get into a mode where they're trying to logic their way out of everything. So they're like, you're like, be a normal guy. So like, they're like, okay. Like I had one client, he was really smart, and this chick was like, hey, I'll come over to your place, but I just want to make sure you're normal. And he was like, well, I don't know if you've heard of DJ Tiesto, but he's my good friend, and I also like to wash dishes. And the chick was like, like, fuck this, I'm out of here. Like the chick like ghosted him, and he's like, what did I do wrong? And his thought process was like, Tiesto's cool, so if I mention that, it sounds normal, but also like gives me value. And what do normal people do? Well, they wash dishes, so I'll say I wash dishes. Well, you can't look at it like that. Obviously, like that, those are like huge red flags. Like any normal person wouldn't say that. So a lot of guys are like trying to be normal, trying to be the cool guy, etc. Like, rather, like they're replacing a lot of inner game mindsets or like inner game frames with external game tactics that are like very firmly logically rooted. Like another example,
I agree with that.
like I had another client that he was like, okay, I got the girl back to the house after the date, and this is a fucking disaster. He's like, in his mind, he thought, how can I get her clothes off? Oh, I can do it indirectly by playing strip poker. So they go to play strip poker. Did I tell you this story before?
Yeah, I think you did. I think you told it to me a while ago, so
And,
I remember partially how he is.
yeah, yeah. So they're playing strip poker, and like he was losing, and like he ended up like in his boxers or some shit. And the chick was just like only had her shirt off and was like down to like a bra and like her pants. And she's like, "This is boring. I'm gonna leave." And of course, he was like trying to, again, like trying for this big outcome, like trying to be the cool guy, but also just sounding way overcompensating, etc., which is a whole other problem. But the chick's like, I'm gonna go, and he thought, well, I'm gonna probably lose her anyways, and I'm really curious how her tits feel, so I'm just gonna like reach in her bra and grab her tit. And then so he did that, and the chick like freaked out and then like stopped responding to his texts, obviously. And he's like, why is she not replying to my texts? And I was like, dude, first of all, it's like, borderline sexual assault. Second of all, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I don't know. And like I told you, another dude, like I taught him how to pull, so he was like pulling chicks home, and then he's like, none of them are closing. I was like, what are you doing when you get them back? And he literally was like taking them to his bedroom, undressing, and putting on a condom. And I was like, you're not touching your clit? And he was like, huh? It's like, Jesus Christ. So those are extreme examples, but if the guy's like trying to approach it like solving like a math problem, or like I don't know. I feel bad for those guys because I resonate with their awkwardness and the fact that they're like trying to reason their way through it.
Oh,
But
I definitely resonate with that.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
in a sense.
like at some point, like what's the best way to describe it? I don't want to say like just be cool because it's like pretty ambiguous, but like you have to just kind of like not be looking for perfection or looking for preciseness. It's paradoxical though because a lot of my method is very precise, but that's what makes this like an art as well. Like Mystery called it the gay term, the Venusian arts. Where it's like, yes, there's a system, yes, there's a method, and yes, there's strategy, but it's like an art form in the sense that frame trumps all, and like vibe trumps all, and like the way that you're carrying yourself and presenting these things
Yeah,
can
totally.
cancel out systematic rules. But then you can't really explain it in those terms because then guys are like, oh, so like some things aren't valid and there's exceptions. So but guys are trying too much to do like it's not always like if then, if then, if then, if then, like a computer program. It's like if probably then, but also if something else happens, it's like dynamically changing. And like the power of advanced game is like your ability to like adapt, but also maintain those internal mindsets and frames that are going to allow all the rest of the behavior to come out properly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that well, to backtrack a bit, I don't know if you've heard the story, but I've told it several times on interviews. When I was freshman year in college, when I first started going to college parties, to me it was such a fucking mystery how people like how did guys go from talking to a girl to making out with her? Like I wasn't even thinking about sleeping with girls. I was just thinking like, how do you go from the because I could go up to girls and say, hey, what's up? I go to BU, but I had a really hard time going from that to making out with a girl. And to me, it was just
It
such
was
a
a mystery, no pun intended.
it was such a puzzle. And then I remember I had a few buddies who were like, they would go to parties and in 5 minutes they were making out with chicks.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, bro, how did you do that? He's like, what?
yeah.
How did you make out with her? He's like, I don't know. We started making out. Like to him, and like he didn't even understand what the confusion was. But to me,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, but how do you go from the point where you're talking about random shit? It didn't make any logical sense to me. It wasn't until like I stopped thinking about it so logically, more in like just like feeling it, like feeling the
Oh,
girl's vibe,
yeah,
sexual
yeah, exactly.
tension, chemistry. Then you kind of like just like I don't know. I feel like a big part of it is also just to be able to tone down, not completely shut up, but really tone down your conscious mind and kind of let biology and like your subconscious takes over.
Well,
Like, I
that's where
don't
they
think cavemen had a hard time getting laid, or I guess if they did, didn't reproduce. But like, I think it was just like there's like this primal thing, like we're more or less created to be able to like sleep with girls, and like a part of it is just shutting off like the overactive conscious mind, just kind of like that's when guys. I think that's when guys come off like kind of creepy or socially awkward. It's just like big part of it is they're just too stuck in their conscious mind. They're like over analyzing every move. But if they could like, which is why I think that alcohol is a big game changer for you initially. Is
yeah.
it tone down your conscious mind and kind of like that innate instinct was able to take over. Combine that with the fact that there's a bunch of optimal moves and understanding female psychology, understanding psychology in general, understanding like optimal game theory. Combine those two things, and that's what creates the results, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would have situations where I'd be in the nightclub. I would like first arrive, I hadn't drank yet. And like chick would pass by and I would have too much anxiety to even approach her. But also if I did approach her, a lot of times I would bomb the set because it would be like, and then like 2 drinks later, I could go and talk to that same girl and I'm like fully in the zone. And it's just because I like chilled out a bunch of that analyzing and I chilled out a bunch of that fear.
Yeah. To someone who like, for example, who's watching this and they're like, all right, dude, like I get it, but like my vibe is dog shit. Like I have a horrible vibe, I always creep girls out. What do you think they can like start doing to change that?
Um, Stop trying to be gamey and fancy. That's like where a lot of the creeping out comes from and where the cringe comes from.
Yeah.
Like guys are trying to like girls are very, very, very perceptive. Um, I think like the anatomical statistic of gray matter versus white matter in men and women is men have 4 times more white matter. I always get it fucking reversed. I think it's white matter that men have 4 times more of, That's responsible for local processing and basically analytical thinking. It is exactly why men dominate like the fields of logic and philosophy and math and science. It's not all like what's it called? You know, disadvantage due to gender roles in the workplace and this and that, or opportunities that women have. We actually have an evolutionary advantage, and that's because we were hunting and solving problems and trying to survive and forging technology. And so
women excel in like social situations. Like
they have
10 times way better than the average man.
Yeah, they have 10 times more gray matter. So that's responsible for interneuronal connections, and that's responsible for verbal and emotional tasks and social tasks. Yeah, so like a 18-year-old chick is like probably more perceptive than we are, even after all the time in the game, just because their brain is wired like that. Because they were in tribes. I always joke with chicks. I'm like, you guys were in tribes, socializing and getting your boobs sucked, right? And they're like, you're an asshole. But I mean, that's why they like soap operas and like fucking, taking care of like little animals and shit. But my point is that they're very perceptive. So like when a dude is, as they call it, incongruent, basically he's trying to be someone that he's actually not. They pick up on that right away. And dudes all think like, in order to get the girl, I need to do fancy thing X. I need to impress them with Y. What does she want me to do in this situation? What would a cool guy do in this situation? How do I tell the funny joke? All these things come from the frame of being someone they're not to get a positive outcome. And in reality, it backfires and it becomes like a negative impact. As soon as you're trying to micromanage who you are to the girl, that will cause her to lose interest in almost every case, or it's going to set you at a disadvantage. But it's hard for guys to like just be themselves, because then they run into the problems of like, oh, but what do I say after I open, or oh, how do and that's where giving them like a game plan for here's how you move things from the open to the close. Here's what you do at every step of the way, and here's general guidelines for how you vibe. Then with a little bit of practice, now they can suddenly do it without being this fucking fancy gamey guy that creeps girls out. But I think that's where a lot of the creepiness comes from. Like you see pickup artists, but classically the RSD guys, and I can spot them in different cities when I'm teaching programs and stuff. They're just like they stand out. Like you can see them from across the room without even hearing what they're saying. They just stand out as behaving oddly with their body language and their actions. And if you're listening, it just sounds off, and the girls are all looking at each other like, what the fuck? And the guy thinks like this is like the cool guy game. This is like the way to get chicks. So like I constantly say in my trainings and even on YouTube, like, don't do fancy gaming stuff. I don't know, where do you think it comes from?
Oh, I mean, I definitely. Well, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. But yeah, I think over gaminess or fanciness or whatever is like the biggest epidemic in the community.
Guys being sure of themselves too is another big.
Guys who would have gotten laid if they had just like toned it down, just been like normal, like fuck themselves out of lay after lay. I mean, I've seen this time and time again, like trying to go over the top, over fancy, like, and the girl just thinks the guy's weird. And I think that being over gamey is worse than being boring, because if the guy's boring, the girl might be neutral about the guy. Yeah, no, there's nothing exciting about it. But if the guy's over gamey, the girl's gonna think something negative. He's a creep. He's a weirdo. He's I don't know, whatever. So I think that it's almost like going too much in if it's like a spectrum, boring and over gamey, like it's worse to be on this end of the spectrum than on this end of the spectrum. Like the boring guy can at least get laid because of like his looks once in a while, or just like luck, versus the over gamey guy is gonna like, even a girl who might have normally been into him is gonna creep her out, which is by like trying, because humans aren't even wired to be like attracted to someone who's trying really hard to like put on a show for them or impress them. You immediately think there's like a catch or what the fuck is going on. I would say a big part of it is just like it becomes a little bit of a cycle, like meaning if a guy just gets rejection after rejection after rejection because his vibe is shit, that's gonna make his vibe worse. Whereas conversely, if you take that same guy, that's where like the idea of a rut comes from. It's just like a series of bad experiences and you have a hard time breaking through that. So I think that if I take a guy who sucks a game and I like flip a switch and every single girl he talks to is immensely attracted to him, like within a few days, his vibe is gonna be 100 times better. even once I turn the switch off, because he's just going to be used to like, okay, like everyone likes me, people like me, and that's just going to affect his, unconscious process. Like, all right, well, I don't have to try to impress people that much because people already like me. Oh, well, I can just be myself. I can just crack jokes. I can relax because I don't have to win people over. People already like me. So I think, part of this just becomes like a vicious cycle. And I think that, you got to break out of it. Like just step by step.
That's what I was just saying. It's also them not being sure themselves. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. As soon as they start doubting their own value, then what they're portraying to the girl is someone who's not sure of their own value, and the girl's never gonna see value in that. I tell guys, like, if you went to a car dealership and the car salesman was like, look at this rusty piece of shit car, like with the bumper falling off that needs like this and this replaced and a cracked windshield, like, do you want to buy it? That's basically what most guys are doing when they go out to the club. They're like, even though they might wear a fucking blazer, or even though they're like on the see-through exterior, playing the part, some of them are like, okay, I'm gonna wear my blazer and I'm gonna wear this perfume and like, I want to work out and this and that, and then they get to the club and they're not fully confident in their value, and when they roll up to the chick, it's like the fucking rusty piece of shit car. It's not the nice Lamborghini or whatever. I mean, it doesn't even totally apply because you need money to buy a Lamborghini. But my point, like if you say, hey, do you want to go fuck this like piece of shit, they're gonna not want to.
Yeah, right? I think a guy, like if a guy right now, has dog shit internal game, they're always told their vibe is shit. I think like it's just a series of things they're gonna need to do, and I think there's gonna be that initial pain period, like where they're breaking through, like to go from having their vibe be dog shit to like being more or less a normal cool person. I think it's going to involve several things. I think it's going to involve, one, unlearning all the dumb shit like over gaminess, over fanciness, like stuff they've seen, like stupid pickup videos, and like just unlearning a lot of bad behaviors. That's a part of it. The other part of it is just like, will come down to nutrition, sleep, like just getting their hormones on point, getting their health on point. When your brain is working clearly, it's a lot easier to be confident and normal when you're not constantly stressed, like we were talking about earlier. I think a part of it is just going to be recognizing that, okay, I need to get positive experiences in my life. Like when you slept with 300 girls, it's hard for you to like fall low because you have all those experiences to fall back on. It's hard for you to have like, you can have a bad night, but you're not going to be as crushed because you're like, whatever. It's like one night I've had a lot of success. Like I don't really care that much, whatever. It wasn't a good night, but fuck it. So I think it's going to be like, okay, like, this is going to be like a little bit of a pain period, but I need to like, improve the shit. I need to get the reference experiences. It's going to have to be, I mean, ideally sleeping with hot girls, but like even just going out and like being able to have a normal interaction with humans, like being able to interact, develop. I think the big one also is like a lot of guys nowadays, they just have no friends. Unfortunately, it's really common. Like the guy, he's like, "Oh, why can't I get lit?" I'm like, "Well, like, what are you? How often? Like, how many guys do you go out with?" I don't have any friends. Or like, or more commonly, it'll be like, all right, like just get your buddy, take some good pics of you, and you take some with him in exchange. And they're like, "Oh, but I don't have anyone that can take a picture of me."
Yeah. I'm very often getting asked like, what do I do if I have no wing? Like, and I want to just. People are always like forced to be going out solo, they think. So yeah, I don't know.
It's going to be really hard to be a massive player if you have no friends. Like it's just, you got to get friends. Like I think that's one thing I always did have going for me, is that even when I sucked with interacting with women, I still have like buddies. Like I think that has to be a key part of it. Like also like fixing up, like looking good, hitting the gym, like you're gonna get more positive reactions, at least off the bat, if you look good. So working on like just optimizing every possible angle, like approaching it from every side, and then just counting on the fact that that's gonna slowly start to shift your like, your internal, I guess, interpretation of the world. Like you'll go from thinking that women are horrible, like the manosphere guys, like just like think that, women are horrible, all these whatever horrible creatures, but in reality, it's just guys who've had bad experiences. But there's also awesome women out there. So it's like shifting from your internals from thinking like, oh, the world's horrible, to like, yeah, the world is an interesting place, good and bad people, and like, I'm a cool guy, so a lot of girls will like me. Just shifting to that.
Yeah. Yeah, what you're touching on though is like the classic fake it till you make it stuff. Like I still teach that, even if it's like corny and cliche, because once you have quote unquote made it, which just essentially means have gotten some results, you can always point back empirically and demonstrably and say, well, I fucked a 9 before. It's not a big deal that this fucking 7 is being or like or with you know, in the early parts when you have not done anything, that fake it part is important because you still need to have the mindset that you can get that girl even if you've never gotten that girl before. The classic story that I always tell is me and my old business partner Josh. We had a Indian client that he was a virgin, and he said, "Well, the girls respond positively to you because you banged hundreds of chicks, and they respond negatively to me because I banged zero." And I was like, "My lay count's not on a fucking post-it note on my forehead. It's just at the beginning of every post on the forums." But no, and in every intro into any group, "Hello, I've banged X amount." Like always, like in real time. Like
On Wikipedia.
I'll introduce
John
myself
Anthony, lay count 1300.
I'll introduce myself to like one person one day and be like, "Yeah, it's 780 or whatever." The next person, like 3 days later, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm John, 782 count here." But I was like, "Dude, they don't know." So like, if I roll up weak and act like a pussy, they're going to respond negatively to me. If you roll up and act like the man, that's like the fake it part, they're going to respond positively. And lo and behold, he was able to get a make out in a poll, and we were joking like he's like the coolest version in the club. It was like something like a light went on in his head, and it was like a turning point for him, where like suddenly he wasn't held back by his virginity in his mind, which was really just him getting in his own way. And it's like this with so many guys, and that's why I hate the looks back stuff. Like, yes, you should optimize your sexual market value and work on yourself. Yes, but to say like, oh, I can't get girls because I'm Asian. I can't get girls because I'm short. I can't get girls because I live in X city. I can't get girls because I have a lisp. I can't get girls because I have an accent. And guys will make a million excuses, and then they're literally handicapping themselves to an extreme degree. Yes, objectively, a short ethnic guy with an accent won't get as many girls as a tall model-looking dude, that's natural with his charisma. But you can still crush it. And there's still tons of guys that have a bunch of disadvantages that crush it because they didn't just be defeated by it. They optimized what they had to work with and did as best they could. But that's the lesson. Like, optimize what you can and then go forth that you're still the man. Don't look at yourself as being anything less than like the ultimate man project.
I think there's just certain things that you cannot change, like your ethnicity, and there's just like dwelling on it there's 0 point to it. Like the guys,
Yeah.
the Indian guys who are like they just want me really badly to admit that it's like impossible for an Indian. Like, dude, but I'm Indian, but I'm Indian. It's like, yeah, you're Indian. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit harder for you on like average, but like there's Indian guys who crush it. Like there's what's the point of dwelling on it? Like you can't
Look at Mandeep. I trained that dude. He's at like 200 count now or something. He was like my most negative student ever.
I mean, look at my business partner. I'm not gonna say his name, but Indian P. He didn't lose his virginity until he was like what 26, 27. Like now he goes out to clubs and pulls girls, bangs girls from online. Like completely different person. He said he spent like 5 years trying to lose his virginity. Like he thought that his future was gonna be an arranged marriage. Like that was like he's like, yeah, the best I can do is like get like a 5 as a arranged wife. Like that was like my best perspective. You know he didn't change the fact that he was Indian. He's still as Indian as he ever was.
Yeah, I had like debilitating extreme social anxiety, and now well over 1,000. Anything is possible, young men.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's no point dwelling on something you can't change. Like your body weight and your style is fully changeable. So
Yeah, no,
there's no
I
excuse
agree.
for that.
That's why I hate a lot of the stuff in looks max is they focus on, oh, well, you're not tall, so like you're fucked, or you don't have a strong jawline, you're fucked. And even chewing gum every day or other stupid shit they recommend won't help.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, I think there's just two extremes. The first end of the spectrum is kind of what RSD preaches, which is like looks don't matter, like looks don't matter, like looks play zero role, like whatever. The other one is that the other extreme is that it's only looks. Any guy who ever gets laid is
Dude,
because it looks.
I even used to believe that at one point. I can't believe they convinced so many people that was true.
I
That
know.
looks plays zero role. Like I remember Tyler was like he's like, you guys think Julian is better looking than me, right? And everyone's like, oh yeah, way better looking. And he's like, okay, he's like, let me tell you. He's like he's like, looks don't really matter at all in this game. He's like, it comes down to like if his skill is like a little bit better than mine, or what he's I don't remember. I don't
I
even
think
think.
one example they used is that even 1%. So like he's like looks matter so little. If I'm even 1% more on than Julian, I will get all the girls. And if he's 1% more on than me, like 1% is going to make the difference between 5'6" and like 6'3". Yeah, it's pretty preposterous. Like the looks don't matter. But yeah, I do think a lot of guys are brainwashed into that. And then the other end of the spectrum is like, I'm not a perfect 10. I'm fucked. Like there's nothing I can do to improve. Like I'm not 6'3", so I'm fucked. There's nothing I can do. I'm only 5'10".
The looks max groups is like just mostly like a bunch of incels, just like making fun of each other and like worship, like doing Chad worship, which is retarded.
Well, I don't think it's even so much as it's like the whole red pill community is like a giant community. The incel community is just like a giant community of people who take in such an extreme position and refuse to like they will not like if you point out any example of someone who looks exactly like them who's having results, they will discount it immediately.
I don't even get involved with that shit anymore. Like I don't know.
I completely stopped like trying to post in any of those communities. Like I would post articles with like proof of like, all right, this is how this guy who's not that tall was able to get results. Like, bam, here's proof in your face.
But then
with all the screenshots from start to finish, fake.
Then the response is always like, yeah, like the exception is not the rule or whatever. Like everyone knows some fat guy that banged a chick. Who cares? That's not normal and not usually possible.
Oh, I wouldn't even get that. I would just get right away fake news. Didn't happen.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what people say about my results. They're like, oh, he looks like a 3. There's no way he's banged even 10 chicks. And it's like, I have infield with like hundreds of girls. I have like you and David Swift were part of that one group chat where I was like posting a picture of every new clothes, like with the chicks, and everyone was like getting fucking alerts all the time.
I do remember that. My phone was going off at like 6 a.m. Like new clothes, 756. All right, to touch on something that I think also is going to apply to a lot of guys watching this, like, what do you think is you've been in this community for ages. What do you think is like, aside from the over fanciness and over gaminess, which I agree with you on 100%, what do you think are just the other shit that people think, which is like 100% wrong and is like actually hurting them instead of helping them?
100% wrong. Well, I would say
like 95% wrong, mostly.
No, I mean, I'm not laughing about the percentage. I'm laughing about like most of the stuff in the forums is wrong. That's the funny part.
Except the PWF forums.
What's the link for that again?
Forums.playingfire.com.
Forums.playingfire.com. One of the biggest misconceptions, and again, RST's fault, and just intuitively you would think this would be true, is people think that like more practice will lead to better results. So like they think like if I go out more, I'll get better. If I do more approaches, I'll get better. If I do more, the problem is like most guys are stagnating in their process, in their progress, and that's because they're doing game wrong. And going out more is actually harmful in a lot of ways because they're reinforcing bad behaviors and they're practicing a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't work. And then that goes into the unwiring you were talking about. Like some of my hardest clients have been guys that have like really hardcore practiced a lot of RST stuff that's totally wrong. And then I'm like, okay, here's how you fuck a lot of chicks in like simplistic terms that are easy to implement. And they can't shake all the like fancy bullshit they're doing and all the waste of time, little like tricks and other stupid shit that's like hurting them. And they just can't execute. Like, they're literally, I'd rather take a guy that has no experience with quote unquote pickup or game than like a guy that's like a seasoned RST. It's hard to even like say without laughing. Someone who's studied a lot of pickup or done a lot of like seduction or game or whatever, lots of times is like worse than like a normal dude off the street.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
And it's ironic. Like when I first found the book Mystery Method, I didn't know any other pickup artists, and I hadn't like hung out with any yet or gone to any like meetups or anything. And I was learning all this on my own with Mystery Method book. And I thought like, oh, there's guys around the world that are reading this that have like this giant advantage. Like there's, we're not connected, or I didn't know about the forums and stuff. I was like, but there's all these, any guy that knows about this has like this giant advantage. And ironically, like the opposite is true. It's like when I first met my first group of pickup artists, it was in an RST free tour when I had just hit 100 lays, and everyone was like super fucking terrible at game, and also super fucking weird and like all this other shit. And I didn't even really. I mean, I made those guys my wings, but I would have been better off with like non-pickup artist wings that like weren't studying the stuff, because I don't know. What's your theory on why the community guys are fucking terrible?
Oh man, there's a few reasons I think. I think that a big part of it is wrong information. They're following information, like they're guys who go out every single night. They've gone out for 3 years and they still suck. It's like the same guy who's been going to the gym for half a decade and is still as skinny as the day he started. In fact, now he has like kind of when you said they're worse off. Like now that guy has like back problems and shit because he's been deadlifting for 5 years with horrible form and hasn't increased weight at all. So I think that definitely applies. Just incorrect information. And unfortunately, there are a lot of sources. I think it's like that with a lot of things nowadays. Unfortunately, like the internet has brought a lot of information, but it's also brought a lot of bad information. So there's just a lot of bad info out there, and a lot of guys just can't differentiate between accuracy and inaccuracy, and they like idol worship like some guys, like for example, like Tyler, so they can't like logically evaluate the information that he says. So I think wrong information is a big part of it. I think that this is something that I know you said a lot in the past, and I think that just being a pussy, like guys who like, they actually have all the right information, but they can't take the action. They have a hard time putting themselves out there. They like I think that pretty much everyone has some level of fear, but the difference between guys who are pussies and non-pussies is the guys who are non-pussies, they can face their fear, put themselves out there and overcome it most of the time, versus the guys who are pussies, they'll shy away from their fear. It's kind of like back in middle school, like you didn't have to beat the bully in a fight, you just have to fight back. And the bully would not pick on you again, right? The bully would always go for the guy who didn't fight back. That's kind of what it comes down to. It's just like if you don't have to. I think that like when a girl sees that you have some balls, like you're willing to take the action, even if like it's a little sloppy and like you're a bit awkward about it. That's much preferred to the guy who won't take any action and will just kind of be like super passive and like just hope that the girl like magically makes it happen for him. So I think that's a big part of it as well. I think that a lot of guys do need to depussify themselves. That makes sense.
I have a video called Depussification 101 on my channel.
Oh, do you? We'll have to link that.
I was like super drunk when I made it too.
I think a lot of guys also. I think it comes down to lack of self-awareness about their own life. Like a lot of guys think that they're, for example, a lot more successful than they really are. Bro, I already know game, like more or less. Like, oh, was the last time you got laid? Like, oh, 9 months ago. How attractive was she? She was rather portly. Like,
well, it's an ego thing. Like, yeah, like any guy that's not like really awkward, a lot of them, even if they've only been with like 20, 30 girls or whatever, which they think is high. I mean, I guess it is by relative or by normal standards, but by like admitting that they need help in that area, they feel like less of a man or something.
Yeah, 100%. I think
ego, or like embarrassed, for like anyone to find out or judge them or whatever.
Yeah, I understand how that happens, but I think that like you need to completely wipe that mindset from your like you for example, you wouldn't feel like you're trying to get into weightlifting, you're trying to put on weight. You wouldn't feel like less of a man for asking a guy who's like been bodybuilding for 10 years on like proper workouts and nutrition like that. You wouldn't be like no one would ever think like, oh dude, you're a little bitch. You're asking for like workout advice, like what you can't like figure this shit out on your own. But like you wouldn't think the same thing with business, right? Like no one would ever make fun of someone for reaching out to like a mentor, someone who can help them like skip past all their failures and like go straight to like making a lot of money. But for some reason, with like meeting women, there's like this like stigma that like
it's like your manhood is involved.
Yeah, you're like less of a man because you're like trying to improve and learn a certain thing that you just weren't. Because of your upbringing, you didn't learn when you were a young kid. Like I never.
But for a guy to like ask for help with that, on some level, he's simultaneously admitting, even if not explicitly, that he is not that good with girls, or that he's not like in the upper tier of being good with girls. And no guy really wants to think that because it makes him feel like shit.
Maybe if they come from it from an ego perspective, but I mean, honestly, like I still ask you to this day about certain situations, like not super often, but like I'll be like, yo, this just happened. What do you think about this? Like I probably have my own theory, but I still want to get like your feedback. I don't think I'm like less of a man for doing that or that like, I'm dog shit at meeting girls. I just think that, all right, like there's someone who I can still learn from.
Well, it's different for us. Yeah, and we already have like vetted ourselves out. If you're like not immersed in this shit and you're just like a normal common dude, you don't you don't want anyone to know that like you're going to like the dating guru. It's not because they might think of themselves as like a social misfit or like a loser or something. I think that's the vibe I get when guys are like reluctant about what people are gonna think or whatever. But wait, backing way up when yeah, that's really a good analogy is someone who's been deadlifting wrong for 5 years and then has back problems. It's like these guys, they're being told because of the idol worship from guys like Tyler, who they think is like the ultimate cool man, even though he's like a huge loser in reality. They think that this is how you get chicks just because they said it. They just take everything dogmatically, and then they go and do it, and they think the reason it's not working is because they didn't do it enough, or they haven't bought enough of the products. Like there's over 30 now from RST, and they think that the more that get put out, the more better chances that the more products they get, the more approach they do, the better chances they'll get. But they're stuck in this, like they're never gonna get the carrot they're chasing or whatever. They're never gonna get good at this, going that route. Um, and then when you said the thing about the pussy, I don't classify them as being a pussy just for not taking action. I classify them as being a pussy in the sense that if you were to look at a guy in like half a second, you can make a binary decision: is that guy a pussy or not, regardless of any action he's taking, just by the way he's carrying himself, his demeanor. Like, does this guy look soft, weak, meek, passive, pushover? Like all that whole category. That's what I talk about when I talk about a guy being a pussy or not. Because if a chick and a chick, like I play a game with a chick in like in public or in a mall or whatever, I'll be with a hot chick and I'll be like, is that guy a pussy or not? Like, and we both agree like every time. And how it's like what they say in what is Crazy Stupid Love. I mean, that's Hollywood movie and shit, but Ryan Gosling is like, um, what do you say? When he says Steve Carell, he's like, what do you fucking say? He's like, she decided she doesn't want to sleep with you. You didn't even open your mouth or whatever. How is it? I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing up the fucking.
I never saw that movie.
Oh, you should. It's like the classic pickup artist movie, and he gives them all these tips that are like completely off. But but he's like, what do I do? He's like, what do I do first? He's like, you ask her if you can buy her a drink. He's like, and if she refuses, he's like, you insist. And he's like, do you, what is it? He's like, do you let her talk about her? Or he's like, do you talk about yourself? No, barroom bench. I don't know. It's all stupid. It's like way off. Like I feel like people would watch that and get the totally wrong idea. I don't know. Just
I
like
think
with
pretty much any Hollywood movie would
yeah,
have.
just like with Hitch, he's teaching them like how to give the kiss goodnight at the door. It's like
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Dude, I fucking hate that movie in the sense that like I get that analogy from girls a lot, like, oh, you're a dating coach, so you're like Hitch.
Dude,
And
I
but if you
play up
think
on
about that movie, this is what I always say to girls.
that.
Let's
The
think about
movie,
this movie logically. He teaches the fat guy to creep on the girl, follow her around, learn all this information about herself so he can adjust his personality to suit that. Like, how creepy is that? Like, that is way more creepy than like just being a cool normal guy who runs Valium. Like, what? Like, how are those two even like stalking a girl and trying to like tailor your personality to her? Like, but that's like unfortunately that's the perception. That's how you sleep with a lot.
I actually like Hitch has saved me a whole bunch of times because when a chick finds out what I do, either because she sees my last name on like some fucking piece of mail or like my credit card thing or whatever, or she like reverse images some picture or some shit. Once they find out who I am, if they ever do, and I tell some of them eventually, but they're like, oh, so you're just like this sleazy dude that's teaching guys how to fuck lots of chicks. I'm like, no, it's like Hitch. I'm teaching them how to find love. And they're like, oh, really? That's really nice of you. I'm like, yeah, I'm just teaching shy guys to be able to find the love of their life. And technically, we are doing that because the whole story isn't that you just go from banging no chicks or ugly chicks to getting your dream full package stunner. You have to like work your way through the ropes, and that requires banging a bunch of chicks. Like you have to get proficient with sixes, and then with sevens, and with eights, and with nines.
Well, in the
And just
process, you also have to kind of change who you are. Like,
yeah, you're
there's no way
becoming
you can be an extreme victim and still bang hot girls. You have to get out of the victim. All right, it's either you can bang hot girls or you can be a victim. You can't really do both at the same time. It's just not possible.
yeah, like yeah, exactly. You're becoming cooler and like more adjusted as you move up the ropes, but you're also like having your choice of sevens, on your choice of eights, on your choice of nines. Like guys come on program, they're like, yeah, I'm a virgin or I suck with girls, but I only want to bang nines. Or like, can you guarantee I'm gonna bang a 9.5 on this program? I'm like, no, dude, I cannot, and you probably won't. And that's like the sad reality. But I will help you like get to that point as fast as possible. But yeah, like you don't just jump to bang a full package nine. You're not ready for that yet, right? So like you know as well as I do, like once you're able to consistently get a variety of nines, then you can choose the one that you have the most chemistry with and lock it down if and so you desire. Or you can be like me and like bang multiple nines and like actively cheat on them when they think that I'm their boyfriend and stuff like that. And guys are like, you're an asshole. You can get in a position where like literally not only do you have your choice of hot chicks, but you're actively playing them, which they're not used to. They're
Well,
not.
as a side note, I think that again, some guys might scoff at this, but it is way better to be able to pick from a place of abundance. Like, because then when
Yeah,
looks aren't as much of a deciding factor, it's basically like, all right, I can hook up with all these nines, but which one do I think is the best person? Which one do I have the most connection with? Which one do I see the best possible outcome with? Whereas, like that, most guys, like especially outside the community, like the first hot girl they can get,
yep,
they're scared, so they want to lock it down. Like, doesn't matter if that girl treats them like shit, has no respect for them, isn't even
yep.
a good person. Like, it's just a place of scarcity. So being able to pick from abundance is going to be better, like every single time, than like picking like the
Yeah,
first girl.
yeah. When you like just take a girl out of like not desperation, but out of like you never usually have that opportunity, and you're just like, oh my god, I need to hold on to this. All your behaviors shift to beta behaviors if they weren't even already, which they probably were. And then that girl's going to cheat on you and is never going to respect you, and you're going to have a miserable life.
But, I mean, I think at some level the girl also knows that, like, oh shit, like he's the best, like that. I'm the best that he can get. So
Yeah,
like I'm above his league. Whereas like if that guy had been coming from a place of abundance, it's like wow, like this guy has been with a bunch of girls, but he picked me because he sees something in me. So I better like keep my shit in order so that he keeps loving me. I mean, it's all on a very subconscious level, but I think like that's kind of in a sense how it works. Oh, I was going to touch on the pussy thing. I was gonna say that in my opinion, it's not like a purely black and white thing. Like meaning like it's not either like you're a pussy or you're the man. I think there's different like shades of that, and I think that you can kind of almost level up on the shades by like, well, like because it's not like this guy's what a level 10 pussy or this guy's a
he's
level
like
0
he's like
pussy.
he's like
It's like a
Alex.
level 7
I'm not
pussy, level
I'm not
5
an
pussy.
extreme. You have a dude hit you up. Hey Alex, I'm not an extreme pussy anymore. I'm just mostly a pussy. You're like, hey. I mean, I mean,
I used to be a level 10 pussy. Now I'm a level 7 pussy.
I mean binary in the sense that like do they respect you? Like would they like sleep with you? Like are they like very attracted to you? It's still a threshold thing. Yeah. But like I'm looking at it, yeah, I agree it's a sliding scale. Um but is it is it like enough of a factor to like fuck you over in most cases? That's what I mean by the binary thing. Like a guy that's like a great like game tactician or whatever, it means literally nothing if he's like meek and like really beta and like a pushover and stuff like that. Like no hot chick's gonna want to bang him no matter how tight his game is.
What do you think? Someone who's watching this and is like, oh shit, I'm meek, I'm beta. What do you think they can do to change that?
Um, I tell guys, and I said the past two Sopot summits, I'm like, raise your hand if you think you're a pussy, and I was like, I bet I can assure you most of you are. You're just like in denial. And I like had a dude like stand up. I remember I was like you're clearly a pussy, and it turns out he was like a graduate of a immersion, which is even funnier. This is like the end product. He's probably more of a pussy than he started, but and like confused and stuff like this as well. Um, but I tell them like first of all, start being assertive, like talk louder, like maintain eye contact better, like stand up for yourself. be more assertive, possibly like take martial arts, like start going to the gym. Just like it's not going to be like an overnight process, but the guy has to like just stop being meek, stop being pushover. Like, it's funny because the topic of my Facebook Live today in my mastermind group was how to be more dominant and alpha, and I told dudes I have 2 videos on not being pussy. I was like, watch these 2 videos, and then also watch this video on boundaries. So you can't be a pussy. You have to have boundaries, and then never be kissing the girl's ass or anyone's ass, for that matter. It's your rules. You have to be like in control. Like you're leading, men. You're leading women. Like it's your rules all the time, and you don't ever want to be like playing by the girl's rules or kissing her ass or the point I kept making as I thought about things more throughout that live, I was thinking too many guys are rewarding bad behavior. It comes down to like classical conditioning. So like B.F. Skinner, it's like reward and punishment. Mystery says in his book, he has a model. He says you do a compliance test. If she complies, you give an indicator of interest in IOI. If she does not comply, you give an indicator of disinterest, and then you go back up and DHV more, and then do another compliance test. But that's like the whole fucking cycle. Well, the problem is it gets to a compliance test, the chick does not comply, or the chick pulls some kind of bullshit or some kind of game or some kind of disrespect, and then the dude says, "Oh, I don't want to start a confrontation, or I don't want to lose this hot girl, so I'm gonna reward her for this, or I'm gonna act like it didn't happen." And then it backfires, and she says, "This guy's a pussy," or "This guy's a pushover," or "I just lost all attraction for this guy. I can treat him like shit. He doesn't even care," and then he's fucked. So don't be a pussy. Be assertive. Have boundaries. Speak louder. Have stronger eye contact. Try to like fucking lead things and take charge. It's tough though because like some dudes, like you just look at them and they're kind of like hopeless in a sense.
Well, I think there's 2 things that a guy who's watching this and they're like they identifies this like
If you're watching this, you are hopeless.
They like secretly raise their hand like I'm actually a pussy. I think there's 2 things that guy has to realize. The first thing is that women are not biologically, or anyone's not going to be biologically attracted to a guy who's a pussy, a guy who has no personal boundaries, a guy who has no respect for himself, a guy who's a pushover. Like you just have to realize that behavior is extremely unattractive to women, and it will always lead to you not being successful. And if you do manage to hook up with a girl, her not staying with you or her disrespecting you. And also same thing will apply to a lesser extent with your friends, your family, like everyone. So that's the first part of it. Like realize that this is something that's not good. And the second part of it, like don't delude yourself to thinking, well, I'm just a nice guy. You can be still a really nice person and have boundaries and be alpha. Like I generally think of myself as more or less a nice person, like within limits, but I'm not a pussy. I think the second part of it is also, and I think all the recent science supports this, is that your personality is malleable. So like you can change who you are over time with enough effort. So like brain chemistry is malleable. Like you're not just stuck with what you have now. You could be a pussy at this very moment, but that does not mean that you have to be a pussy a year from now. Like you can slowly start to shift yourself. I think that, for example, like let's do an extreme analogy. Take a guy who's like a giant pussy. Well, most likely, 99% of the time, that guy is like either really skinny or out of shape. But take that guy, give him a proper workout, and he actually follows through with it. He puts on 50 pounds of muscle. He's just going to feel like maybe 70% less like a pussy, because when he looks in the mirror, he doesn't see like a skinny weakling. He sees like, oh, like I have muscle, like I was able to accomplish this. So, like I must, be worth of something. Like if you just start to shift that guy in the right direction with the right actions, like that guy could be in a situation, for example, where a girl is disrespecting him, and he mostly just wants to like just let it go, let it slide, but like part of him knows that the right action is to step up for himself, like not in an aggressive way, not in like a fuck you way, but like, hey, like I actually don't really appreciate you like treating me like that, like that's not cool, and if you do that again, we're done. Like being able to step up for himself, he does that, he's gonna feel like immediately like relieved afterwards, like wow, that felt great, and that starts to shift his like paradigm and his like internals, in a sense, like all right, like yeah, I can be the guy that steps up for himself. I can be the guy that, like leads interactions. I can be the guy that makes things happen. So I think that those two things, just because you're a pussy today doesn't mean you have to be a pussy tomorrow, as corny as that sounds.
Yeah, and in like a relatable sense, I remember when I was explaining to guys this reward and punishment. It's like, I've never had a pet, but say you had like a fucking dog or something, and it went and shit on the rug, and you're like, here's a treat, right? And then it went and like pissed on your fucking, bed sheet, or say your like pillow or something like that, and you're like, good dog, right? Like that's essentially what's happening. Like what that dog will never. It's not like he's not respecting you, but it's being trained that like this kind of behavior is okay, and like you have to now put up with that. You have to put up with piss and shit all over the place, all in your life, and that's what you're gonna get in your dating life is like a whole bunch of like piss and shit.
I mean, yeah, like I think that some people might be like, "Yo, that's fucked up." People are not dogs. But if you think about it, but that analogy definitely applies. Like you think about you own a business and you have an employee and they're the best fucking employee ever. Like they care about the business, they work really hard, they never slack off. But so say you start rewarding them for coming in late. Like they get a bonus if they come in late. They get a bonus if they do less work. Even if they want to do good work, but they're like being rewarded for the opposite. So it just like creates that like, okay, like they're just not going to work as hard. Versus if you take that person who's already good and you reward them working hard, reward them like showing up on time, you're going to get even more out of them. Like so it just humans are like biologically wired to respond to incentives, whether good or bad. It sounds kind of bad, but that's just the way it is. Like even like your closest friends, like you can't like if even, like any friendship, you have someone who occasionally does something that you don't like, and like it doesn't mean you have to end the friendship, doesn't mean you have to like yell at them, but you have to be able to express your boundaries. You have to be able to not reward that behavior. Like your friend forgets to pick you up from work or something like that. You can't be like, yo, bro, let me take you out for beers. Like you have to be like, dude, that wasn't cool. Like you cannot incentivize like behavior that is not good. But yeah, I do agree with that. Like I do see a lot of guys doing that though when it comes to like they would never do that in other aspects of their life, but they do that when it comes to women. Like the woman will like treat them like shit, and they'll like try to overcompensate by like rewarding them, like giving her like, oh, I bought you a gift, honey.
And
Like
it doesn't even need to be like an actual reward. Like just by virtue of not calling them out, you're showing that like nothing is wrong here, even though it is. All right,
yeah,
like guys will like try to pretend like nothing happened. Like the chick will be a huge bitch, and they just try to like play it off like everything's fine, rather than calling her out. Because when you call her out, it can turn into confrontational, which is not comfortable, or maybe she'll get mad at you because you called her out and you don't want to make her mad. Like, that's like the worst when dudes are like full like pussy whipped, and the chick like gets mad at them for like not being okay with her bullshit.
yeah.
You
I
know.
just a quick example. I'm not going to say his name for obvious reasons. But this is like a good buddy of mine. I recently saw him a few weeks ago. We're catching up, and he was telling me he was in a relationship for a bit. And I was like, "Yo, how's it going?" He's like, "Oh, she's bad. She keeps hitting me." I was like, "What?" Like, yeah, she like punched me in the face a few days ago. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like why? I don't know. She's done that bit. Like, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've never been punched in the face by a woman. Like, I don't think it will ever happen. But if it does happen, it certainly won't happen a second time because we will never hang out again. Like, but like, just like letting that slide. Like, yeah, but like she's hot. Like, that is not a valid excuse. And if my buddy who's watching this recognizes this, like, like, oh shit, you're talking about me. Like, yeah, but hopefully it's like a little bit of a wake up call for them. Like, you could not possibly put up with that just because the girl's hot. Like stealing, punch, like physically assaulting. Like no way. I don't care if the girl's like Mia Khalifa or something like that, like my 10. Like there's no way I'm gonna put up with that. Like fuck that shit. Like so I think having and as a result of not putting up with it, the girl is not gonna misbehave, or I don't want to say misbehave because that sounds kind of like demeaning, but like the girl's not gonna like I don't know, like do shit like that in the first place because she knows that, okay, like if I do that, this guy will break up with me or he won't put up with it. Thus, I should not behave like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think we went for a while.
Yeah.
I
2 hours.
what's up?
2 hours.
Yeah, wow. I guess let's send it off. Yeah, that went way longer than I thought. Let's send it off by like giving like I know a quick bit of practical advice. Like, what do you think that we kind of touched on this a bit. What do you think a guy who's watching this, say they're either in my group or your group, you know, they want to learn. They follow our content, so they already have the correct information and stuff. But what are a few easy practical things a guy who's like either following me or you can do like today to like increase their results? Like something fairly straightforward that will pay off pretty quickly.
Buy our products.
Yes. Aside from that,
I would say I look at game in like three big sections. So you have lead acquisition, which is doing night game, which is bars and clubs, day game, which is street malls and cafes, online game, Tinder, Bumble, whatever other online platforms you use. Mainly those three. So you get phone numbers from those by running those properly. And then the next piece is your texting and your ability to set up dates. And then the third that's lead management. And then the third thing is lead closing, which is going on your dates or having dates straight to the house. And then how do you run your date, or what do you do back at the house, and how do you close? So really take a inspection on where you're at with how many leads are you getting from the top sources. I don't really do day game. So see how many phone numbers you can get in a week. Like here's like a little homework assignment. Shoot for 40 phone numbers in a week. It's going to sound like an incredible amount to most guys. If you go out, let's say most guys can do at least Friday, Saturday. Let's say you're out Friday and Saturday. A lot of the bars in the U.S. close at 2. Go out from 10 to 2 and go for one phone number every half hour. That's 2 phone numbers an hour. That's going to give you 8 phone numbers on Friday, 8 phone numbers on a Saturday. Okay, you go out Thursday as well. Now you're up to 24. If you swipe Tinder and Bumble, how often do you recommend they swipe Tinder and Bumble per day? Like an hour, half hour?
no, I don't even think it needs to be that much. I think that because Tinder will put all the girls who already like you to the top of the list. So I think that just I don't know, maybe like 30, 40 swipes in the morning, in the evening. Like if you want to be super optimal about it, but even once a day will be sufficient.
What do you think is a good goal amount for like a newer guy to get for matches on Tinder and Bumble per week, like combined?
It really depends on where they live and their sexual market value and how good their profile is. But let's say like a guy who lives in like average U.S. city, average looks. I think that if you can get like average maybe 5 matches a day, you're on the right track. Like 5 attractive matches. Obviously, there's much more room to grow for that, but you know if you're getting like one match a week, you're on the wrong track. Like it's got to be more like several matches every single day. And I think that a big thing that this kind of goes back to what you were saying, like just increase the volume. Like I think pretty much 98% of guys could benefit from increasing the number of leads that they have. Meaning like they might be on Tinder, but they're not on all the other apps like Get, Bumble, Get, Hinge. Like just increase the amount of volume you have coming in, and like a lot of problems will start to almost take care of themselves.
Yeah. Volume is king. But going back to that 40 leads example, 40 phone numbers in a week. If you do 8 phone numbers Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's 24. Maybe you get another 10 from Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. Now you're up to 34. You throw in a few daytime approaches or whatever, maybe a few extra night game approaches. Do whatever, maybe more online. Do whatever you need to get to the 40. Then try to get 10% of those out on dates, okay, with your shitty texting. For those of you guys watching, I assume your texting isn't that good. Try to get 4 of those girls out on dates. That's 10%. Okay. And then out of those 4 dates, try to close half. That will give you 2 lays in a week. And if you can do that on average every week, 52 weeks times 2 is 104. Now we've just brought you to 100 lays in a year just by working more volume. And then if they learn how to do each stage properly, how to acquire the leads the strongest, how to text the strongest, how to run their dates and close the strongest, now you can see how it's possible to bang 245 in a year.
I think something you've said a lot in the past, which I definitely agree with, is that a lot of guys, when they go out, they don't value it's all or nothing. It's either I pull this girl and if I don't, like we part ways, like we never met. Like I think a lot of guys don't realize the value of like getting a girl's phone number.
Yeah.
Like it's either this chick, she was with friends, so I couldn't pull her, so whatever, it wasn't worth it. Like, well, you were making out with her, I didn't get her phone number. Like, she might be down hanging out another night, most likely is. I think that's a big handicap that guys have, and I think that once you can shift from thinking it's all or nothing to like, okay, this girl has a good situation, I can pull her, versus like, oh, she likes me, we have a good connection, but she's with a bunch of friends, I'm not gonna pull her, so I'm gonna get her phone number and then take her out on a date. Like, I do think definitely for me, most of my results come from like if we take them on aside like day game and night game, it's not same night pulls. It's like getting girl's phone number, getting them out, and then sleeping with her then, not like right away. I mean that does happen, but it's
Yeah,
not.
I stress in my videos that guys should emphasize dates over pulls because a night game pull, there's so much work that has to go into it, and you're going to be meeting 10 to 20 girls a night. You can only pull one. So the majority of the girls you talk to are going to be needed to be closed. The vast majority are going to need to be closed at a later date, almost 100% of them. So the focus really should be on setting up dates and knocking them down. And you have such a high advantage on a date because you have the girl one-on-one. There's no cop blocks. She's right near your house. She presumably has time after. There's no distractions from the club. You can build the connection and the sexuality in that hour that you have together. There's just so much stacked in your favor.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You know for a fact she likes you because she's not faking it. She met up with you outside of like the venue, like 100%. Like the girl is interested in you at some level. That's like a huge
Yeah.
advantage in of itself. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely
So
agree
yeah.
with that.
So like, the biggest practical takeaways are um, do more volume, shoot for that 40 leads a week, work your phone numbers. Don't just let them sit there and try to get them out on dates. Um, make your online game better, obviously, by getting professional pictures, following Alex's advice, and then make sure you're sexual. Make sure you're being physical and incorporating verbal sexual innuendos because that's the other big problem that guys have is keeping things too platonic.
Yeah. Also, I'll add phone number. Phone numbers over Instagram. I see this a lot. Like everyone's just like, because it's easier. Like girls will be like, "Oh, take my Instagram." Guys will jump on that. Like when a girl says, "Take my Instagram," I'll be like, "Yeah, I don't use mine that much. Let me get your number."
That's
Like,
what I do. Yeah.
yeah, it's so much more problem if you get the chick's number than her Instagram. It's just so much easier for her to. She's getting DM'd by 100 guys a day. Like if she's a hot girl, like it's just much easier for her to ignore that versus like her phone number. I'm assuming she doesn't give her phone number to 100 guys a day. Maybe she does, but ideally she does not. So it's like just a number will always trump, or vast majority of the time will trump Instagram. You can do if you feel like it was a quick lead and the girl has no like you didn't establish maybe she's attracted to you but you didn't establish enough comfort, then you could do both. You can say like if you have a good Instagram, like yeah, let me get your number, and then be like, oh, also I'll add you on Instagram. Like you can do both.
Yeah.
So
I don't do any fucking Instagram game or Instagram closing. Like I have zero. Like to this day, I have zero closes on Snapchat because I've never even like had it installed. I've had it like a couple times briefly, but I've never gotten a close off it, and I've never gotten a close off Instagram either.
mm.
And I'm at 1138 girls. And day game is probably like under 50, I would say, probably maybe even lower. It's in my first 400 were night, but I made a big shift around 400 lays to incorporate online. At
Yeah,
first, at first I thought online was cheating.
I think some dudes think that, but I think it's a really silly mindset
Yeah,
because
at
at
the
the
end
end
of
of
the
the day
day,
it's
it's
a
banging
woman.
hot chicks. Yeah, I can work leads in much higher quantity and much quicker and more effectively, and being versatile by working them all day long from my phone through online sources.
I mean, there's certain advantages and disadvantages to online, but one of the big advantages is that the girl has already found you, like you're her type. She swiped right on you. Versus like you approach a girl at a bar, you just might not be her type. Like your game might be on point, you might be a decent looking guy, but she's into I don't know whatever like bodybuilders or she's into like skinny nerds, and you're just not her type. You never know that. Like there's certain versus online, like you're her type. Like that threshold has been met. Um, yeah, I feel like we could ramble on and on about this, but let's end it off by saying for guys who they want to follow you, what's the best way they can like learn more about your method and follow your content?
My YouTube is John Anthony Lifestyle. Um, that's the main place. I have lots of really good videos on there. I had to hide all my hidden camera infield footage due to all the mass hysteria of the pickup channels being removed. Yeah, go to John Anthony Lifestyle, YouTube. For those of you that are following, or for those of you that are watching this on my channel, do you want to give your channel info? You've been the only featured channel that I've ever recommended because everyone else has shit advice.
Thank you kindly, sir. Yeah, we'll link it in the description, but my YouTube channel, just search Playing with Fire, or if you search a lot of Tinder stuff, we'll rank pretty highly for that. We also go to forums.playingfire.com, where basically I help every single person who has questions for free. And if you want to check out my product, it's playingfire.com. You can go to Online Dating Blueprint, where I literally walk you through every single thing, A to Z, on what you need to do to start seeing results online and much, much more. And are you still doing boot camps, or are you taking a break from that?
I have interests all the time, but I'm looking into just having coaches run them for me. So I have coaches in different continents, and we're scaling up with paid traffic now. So it's going to be mostly, it's going to be mostly other guys running them. But I'm going to also be doing an 8-week mentorship program that we're rolling out. And that's going to be like 8 weeks of digital content and then group coaching calls where guys are, I'm able to answer their Q&A and stuff like that. But if guys are interested in checking out my system, it's ultimateseductionsystem.com and sexleadmachine.com.
And for your boot camps, like, these are all guys that I know you've talked to me about. Like, these are all guys who you personally can vouch for. So it's not like just like some random like shithead running the boot camp.
For the instructors?
It's legit.
Yeah, for the instructors, it's guys that have been with at least 300 girls. That's like the first minimum criteria. And they have to be really good at teaching and really good at game themselves, and also really passionate at game. Those are really passionate about game. Those are like the 3 big criteria. Oh, and the 4th thing is they have to have trained with me personally, and they're like all teaching my system. But I am going to be teaching some personally, like by request. Like I have some guys where I'm organizing them together to do a program, but we're really trying to scale up big. And me going around teaching individual programs isn't going to be. There's only one of me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All these girls.
The same reason I stopped doing or significantly minimized doing like one-on-one coaching, like for Tinder. There's only so many people I can reach doing one-on-one. Like that's why I had to like create the the Online Dating Blueprint, like, or create videos. It's just like you reach a lot more people. Like you can't really scale up if you're trading your time directly for like to help one person. As good as it is for that person, just like you can only reach so many people then.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, awesome, man. I think.
We'll put in the description our links, and my email is johnanthonylifestyle@gmail.com. What is your email?
The best way to reach me would be going forums.playingfire.com, and then you can just PM me directly on there. Like I have my profile on there where you can post, and I answer every single person. As long as some days it may take me, I go through every single message, every single comment. So that's the best way to reach me, or on YouTube, or I guess last case resort would be Instagram, but forums is preferred.
So thank you guys. Take care.
Thank you guys. All right. Cheers.